Hey, I just washed my hands.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, a little moist, a little clammy.
A little clammy.
So this is where you'll be Saturday. This is it.
This is
Barclays.
it. This is the big time, kids.
Yeah.
It's a pretty impressive venue, though, isn't it?
It is. So
it's very industrial looking. I'm surprised by all the black and gray.
Well, that'll change when you get in here with your big setup and everything.
Yeah, then it'll be brown, black, and gray. Hey now.
So there's a crew around you all. Let's start with this, because there's been a crew shooting you since I got here today.
I recently signed a deal with Netflix where they get exclusive rights to my next special. Mm-hmm. So as opposed to it going to DVD first and then me selling it to networks, it's going directly to Netflix. And they thought it would be interesting to document me leading up to the special, to the recording of the special. So it's kind of like a 24/7 kind of thing where they basically follow me in training until I get to the fight.
In training.
Yeah.
So talk about training. Talk about crafting an act. Where does an act like this start?
Well, the crummy part is they weren't there for the beginning of it. Like in January when November I really just first started getting back on stage with no act.
With no act. So you go in with nothing.
1 year ago exactly, I had 0.
Okay.
And now we've got an hour and a half.
So where does it start? Are you going to the Laugh Factory in LA? Are you doing stuff with friends? Like how does
I think the first time back on stage was where was it? It was in Arizona. It was in Phoenix at Stand Up Live, and I literally had nothing.
So you're just riffing on the crowd.
That's all I could do is riff on the crowd.
And taking stuff from what they say and
yeah,
pulling
just
it in your head?
Things that people would say, things that I would think of on the spot or what have you, and then I would take that, and then I came to New York and did Caroline's for a week. Again,
5-10 minute sets, little things.
No, I was headlining the week. It was me meandering through, going into survival mode. Stand up is like boxing, so when you're in a situation that's unfamiliar or dangerous for you, you immediately go into survival mode, and you can throw a dangerous right hand, but it's not guaranteed. You know what I mean? Right. So it's that situation, and now. When I started touring with the show, it was in March. And again, it was still so new. The act was only 3 months old at that point. And it wasn't polished or ready yet either. But now it's in a good place. And I'm quite happy with it right now.
Right, and so this will be like the big test run. The DVD, you said you're going to shoot it in...
We're going to shoot the DVD in Australia in March.
In Australia? I like how you're going around the world to shoot these DVDs.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, anybody can just go to one place and shoot it there every time, but what's the point of that?
Well, I noticed with the London, the O2 gig, a lot of it is British humor. You're catering to the crowd a lot.
Yeah, especially at that one, and that was actually my least favorite effort that I've put out.
Why?
I don't know. I don't think I was mentally I wasn't in a good place.
Okay.
I was very distracted by life.
Sure.
And
we can talk about it a little bit later, but that's fine.
Yeah, and now I'm back to being me. So the act is right where I want it, and I'm really happy with it, and I can take pieces of it out and do it in different areas. And the last one, I don't feel there was any one bit that I could be like, I could do this somewhere. The audience was very, they were great, but they were very, not as much of a mixed demographic that I like performing for.
Interesting.
And that's because England has a huge South Asian population, and and they came to represent for me. I'm not mad at that at all. But as a comic, I should have been better I should have been able to have gone in different directions with them, which I didn't do, and that's my fault. So now I'm back, and I'm doing the act that I feel like doing.
Your fault because, from what I read and gather, your set's very improv. You don't really know.
There's a lot of improv,
and it comes across that way too, and it's not scripted. So I wonder about Australia. Are you going to try and tailor things for them, or is that just out?
Australia's always been amazing. The audience is there. Like there's been I did in 2.5 hours one night in Australia. But the funny thing is, I did 2.5 hours. It was a solid 2.5 hours. It was they were laughing from beginning to end. And here's the ironic part. They never gave me a standing ovation. I was so mad about that. I was like, I just did 2.5 hours, and not one of you could get up and go. But I don't think culturally they do that. But It's one of those things where you're just like, nothing? Not one person stood up? But you have great sets in Australia.
Yeah, well, and great sets in America too. Things are really
well everywhere.
Off.
Yeah, especially
I'm trying
with the
to tie it back to this show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see what you're doing. Yeah, and New York is that one city for me that in America where I feel like I tape every DVD, and it would be, you know what I mean? I taped Red, White, and Brown at Madison Square Garden. That was one of my more memorable sets. And New York is one of those cities that inspires you to do well. You know, every time you're in New York and you're performing, I always hear in my head, if I could make it there. I'm like, well, it's up to you, New York.
Yeah.
My opening act will be my buddy Ruben Paul.
Who's Ruben Paul, for those who don't know?
He's a comedian friend of mine from LA. He's C-Fit Woo. He's one of my dear friends he's actually the only person I've ever met in my 23 years of doing stand-up who can help me get my set together.
What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
You know,
like
other
tell you
people
this joke's not worth it?
Well, no, he'd be like, have you thought about moving this to the... He doesn't so much write material, he just kind of watches what I do and goes, why don't you put this here and then that there, and I think it'll flow better. Because sometimes you just get caught up in it, and you obviously you get a better perspective from the outside.
Absolutely.
And so he's always made me make these little shifts from put this here and put that there, and it always made it better.
It's like a track listing for a band. This song fits better here during a set.
Yeah, he's almost like he's a comic, a very, very funny comic too. But he's great at producing what I do.
The Rick Rubin of comedy.
He is my Rick Rubin. Yeah. Rick Ruben Paul, apparently.
That's right. I talk to a lot of songwriters who say that getting the breakup sentiments out is cathartic and therapeutic for them. Is it the same for you? I mean, high publicized divorce, right? So
yeah.
I assume it's going to show up in the act.
The divorce is in there. The baby is in there.
Yeah, well, you read about your life.
I almost think comedians, we almost self-sabotage our personal life.
For bits?
So, yeah, I'm not saying it's done knowingly, but there's probably a subconscious thing that makes us do that. Because if a comedian's happy, that's the worst place he could be. It's sort of an ironic thing.
Yeah.
The happier we are, the worse our show will be. Because what the hell are we so happy about? We're not here to spread joy.
Well, you are here to spread joy.
Yeah, we're spreading joy through our misery.
It's an interesting position to be put in.
It is an interesting position because the more things you have going wrong in your personal life, the more relatable you are to everyone else because everybody else has these problems.
It's true.
And if all you do is get up and talk about how successful you are and how great life is, nobody wants to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Is that easy for you to write those bits?
I think when it happens naturally, it's easy to talk about. And I'm not a guy who runs away from what's happening. I don't hide behind the character. I am me. Mm-hmm. So it's easy for me, and it actually helps me a lot, when I say it out loud.
You don't write, though, from what I gather.
I don't physically write down anything.
You've never written a bit. See, that amazes me.
I used to write my bits down.
Okay.
I, in fact, used to write it out word for word when I first started doing comedy. I would write down, like if I said, I would write, Like I would literally write it out, like word for word, sound for sound. And then I don't know if I just got lazy. I got lazy. I'm acting like I don't know if I got lazy.
It seems more natural if it's not, though, at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think if it was written down, then I would probably say it the exact same way. Mm-hmm. And that's something I probably discovered when I would write it down like that. I would do it that same way every time. And then there's no room for improvement or word economizing or anything. So it makes it more flexible and easier to adjust to the crowd that's in front of you.
Absolutely. Can't remember what interview I was watching, but you were talking about almost needing to do ethnic jokes because that's your thing. People come to see them,
right.
So you have to do it. Is there a pressure for you to add that? Is that something you think, or do those jokes just come to you and you're just like, well, that's...
Well, they come to me. Number one, they come to me. And then there is a bit of a pressure to maintain that flavor of comedy in that, your fans are coming to hear a specific style of comedy. And I don't need to make my whole act about that anymore, but it needs to be in there.
Anymore. So it used to be. You used to feel like
I never felt like I had to. It's just what I did.
That's what you
and
did.
then, as a comic, as an artist, you grow and you got to keep going too. I mean, that's not all I think about. And I could do an entire set of not talking about any cultures or races, and it would still be funny, but would it separate me from the herd anymore? No, I would just blend in. And that's not what I want to do. I want to stand out, and I need to do what is notoriously me, hence the name of the tour, Notorious.
Is it anything with B.I.G as well, or no?
It is with B.I.G.
So there's a hip-hop reference in
there. There was a hip-hop reference. It's
B.I.G.'s
15-year anniversary, death anniversary. I knew I was playing Brooklyn, and I was like, that's it. And Biggie's my favorite MC of all time.
Is he?
Sorry, Mel. Sorry, Ace. Sorry, Craig. Sorry, all the rappers that I'm friends with. But Biggie was my guy.
What was it about Biggie that you related to?
I don't know what it was about Biggie. It just, you look at Biggie and he had everything stacked against him as far as success goes, especially at that time. He wasn't a good-looking fella. He wasn't a svelte guy. He took it, flipped it, and made it him. And I don't know. I sort of felt like his way of telling stories and the details he would tell in the story that would end up calling back later on in the stories. There's songs where, if you listen to the lyrics in today's agenda, I got the suitcase up in the center.
We'll put a little title right there.
Yeah, it's on Life After Death. Anyway, he tells this detailed story about how he's going to get the money from these people and how he's going to rob them, and then when he walked. But there's these little details that you have to pay attention to. And that's the same thing in my comedy, is I drop little lines that may or may not get caught. But it's up to you to catch them.
And you're doing all this without writing it down. So you're just hoping they come back later when you veer off on a tangent somewhere.
Yeah, there's callbacks, and then with me, there's a lot of incidental callbacks.
I can't think of anyone else who's done this at your scale globally. Carlin didn't get to that level, did he?
No, I mean, we live in a different time now, though, where, global accessibility is at an all-time high. I mean, back then you really had to know what you were looking for. Now you can stumble across things and be like, huh, I like that. And that's what happened with me. I got lucky. I popped at the right age. Not my age, I meant the digital age that we live in.
5 quick questions before I let you go, one-word answers.
Sure.
Which accent took you the longest to nail?
Chinese.
Lennon or McCartney?
Who?
Lennon?
Neither.
That's good. Carlin or Pryor?
Carlin.
Bit you're most proud of?
It would be a bit that I did about white people getting offended on behalf of other people.
That's good. And in one word, Russell Peters.
Real.